Hi, I'm Jim Sorenson. I'm a writer for Transformers with IDW Comics and Fun Publications, and you're listening to Marku 42.
Welcome to Mark Who 42. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten. With me is Eduardo M. Freyre.
Howdy, everybody.
And Zion Quinros.
Hello.
On this week's episode, we have Transformer scribe Jim Sorenson. We had him on the show before, and we have him back again to talk all things Transformers with Ed and with Zion. But first, let's do some Doctor Who news. Let's talk a little about Big Finish. Did you guys hear about the big news with their series, Ravenous Volume 4?
I heard that we have a rematch between the Eighth Doctor and the Eric Roberts Master.
Yeah, there's a rematch between Eric Roberts and the Eighth Doctor. But we also have against the Eighth Doctor Missy, Michelle Gomez, Derek Jacobi, who played Dr. Yana, or the Master, Jeffrey Beavers, the Master from The Keeper of Traken and other Big Finish audio adventures. And this is released in October of this year. It's going to be amazing, guys. What do you think about that? All the Masters that are living coming to fight the Eighth Doctor and the 11, I guess, which I don't know if you guys know who the 11 is.
I heard about the 11. Isn't the 11 a Time Lord that has, like, the memories or personalities of all
the personalities of his previous regenerations, and they are evil, but one of the iterations is actually good, but he gets bossed over by the other ones. But this is going to be a great story. I think the Paul McGann and Eric Roberts is going to be amazing because we never thought that the Eric Roberts Master was ever going to come to Big Finish because the TV movie is owned by Universal, not by really the BBC completely. And so that's why Yijitsu and Daphne Ashbrook have not come to Big Finish. I mean, they've been on Big Finish, but they haven't come as their characters from the TV movie. And now we've got Eric Roberts, after 20 years, coming back and being allowed to be the Master in Big Finish. It's amazing.
I'm very interested to see how one deals with four Masters.
Well, I kind of wonder if
they're in separate stories. They're in separate stories. They're not all together.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Although, I mean, we did see Capaldi have like a tough time having to juggle both Missy and the John Sims Master.
Story 1 of set 4 is written by Matt Fitton, and it's called Whisper. Story 2 is also by Matt Fitton. It's called Planet of Dust. Story 3 is a two-parter called Day of the Master by John Dorney. And John Dorney has this to say about his masterful conclusion. Day of the Master was possibly the most exciting and yet terrifying brief I've ever had. Finishing off the Ravenous arc was a big enough responsibility on its own. But throw in wanting to give great material to Sir Derek Jacobi and Michelle Gomez, and that's before we even get to the heart-stoppingly fantastic prospect of bringing Eric Roberts' Master back face-to-face with the Doctor again for the first time in over 20 years. Well, you can see why it might be intimidating. But honestly, it was one of the best times I've ever had writing a Doctor Who story. I really hope the audience enjoy it as much as I did. Well, John, you said a mouthful. Doctor Who Ravenous 4 will be available for pre-order now, ahead of its release in October 2019 at BigFinish.com.
By the way, speaking of like big Finish stories, I just finished the other day listening to The Last Adventure.
Oh, okay, good. That was good, wasn't it? That's the Colin Baker ender, yeah.
He was at Galley this year, and so was Lisa Greenwood.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
The actress who plays companion Flip Jackson.
Yes,
and
I love Flip. I love Flip. She's great.
Yeah, and Lisa herself she's a gem. She's adorable. Her Her and Nicola Bryant together were just so good. They were great together. In fact, if anyone from Big Finish is listening to this, you got to get Perry together with the Sixth Doctor and Flip, because the two of them just worked really well off each other. Like, honestly, if I hadn't found out otherwise, I could have sworn that the two have recorded Doctor Who together. And honestly, it has to be stage fright, because we get Jago and Lightfoot back.
Yes.
And I love the Valeyard trying to do imitations and impressions of the previous Doctors.
Yeah.
I was just getting a big kick out of that. I'm sure Michael Jaston had like a fun time recording that. I was trying to figure out, because I know that the Valeyard had Flip reading for the part of Zoe, and I'm just trying to figure out what was the outfit that he was having her wear, like which of her iconic outfits. Because I'm listening to the description and I'm like I'm trying to figure it out. Like I couldn't.
Right.
I may have to listen again just to that scene to figure out what it is he's trying to get her to wear.
Yeah.
It's probably what Zoe was wearing in War Games.
The Mind Robber?
I would say don't go Mind Robber, because then because every time you say Mind Robber and Zoe, I get this thing where I'm being told I'm taking jailbait because Zoe was under 18. The actress was an adult, and I think she was so good looking in that suit. That cat suit, it was, I'm sorry, I have to say it, but
100%.
she is a child, the character, so I can't say that. Yeah.
Logic dictates it probably was the outfit that she wore in the War Games.
In more Big Finish news, Big Finish, as of today, April 1st, which is the day we come out on Odyssey Radio, has updated their website. Their website is completely new looking. It works for mobile phones and tablets now, and of course for the web. But they were also going to do something that really upsets me, and I'm glad they didn't do it. They have a 1-to-1 conversion rate at Big Finish, where basically you pay £20 for an item in England, you pay $20 for the item in America. So Americans get it for cheaper. But the British public did not like that. And so Big Finish, when they started the website on April 1st, was going to change the conversion rate and make it go by XE currency rate, and you pay what actually is £20 at the moment you buy it. Now, because the Americans had a problem with that, it is being delayed at least 2 months, and we'll see if it happens or not. I hope it doesn't, because I like paying the cheaper prices. Sorry, British fans. So we're going to take our first break now. When we come back, we are going to have Ed and Zion interview Jim Sorenson about Transformers from IDW Comics and other Transformer things. Ooh, it's more than meets the eye, coming next.
Odyssey. Dare to wonder.
You're now listening to Mark Who 42 from the Whoniverse and beyond.
Welcome back to Mark Who 42. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten. With me today are Eduardo M. Freyre.
Howdy.
And Zion Quinros.
What's up, Mark?
I'm doing well. And you know what? I'm doing so well today that I deserve a break. So, Eddie, I'm going to let you run the show. How about that?
Ooh, a vacation.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little vacation.
I rule now.
No, only today. Only today.
I'm going to indulge in a Delgado laugh, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Peoples of the universe, please attend carefully.
All right. So why don't you take it away, Eddie, and bring on our special guest.
Okay. Well, you know what? Before I introduce our special guest, which those of you who followed the old show will recognize, what can I say? It's a guy who's more than meets the eye. And why did I do that? Because, well, we're going to talk Transformers today. Specifically, we're going to talk the Transformers comics, the great Transformers comics that have been brought out by the company IDW, which they've had the Transformers license since 2005, and they crafted over a decade's worth of this very complex, very interesting universe. They took some Transformers lore and turned it on its ear, but you know what? They closed it off last year. They did a big miniseries to just wrap everything up, And recently, they started up a new continuity. So, I just thought in honor of that, let's take a look at what happened. And, and I think who better though, in addition to Zion and myself, we're bringing in the special guest. We're bringing back Jim Sorenson.
Hello.
Hey, thank you for coming back, Jim. Those of you who remember, Jim is responsible for The Ark, 2 books full of the character models, animation models from the old G1 series. He did the Allspark Almanac, which what volume did it reach up to? I know there was a ton of them.
Well, there were 2 volumes, and then we did a collected volume that added those 2 with stuff we did for the fan club and some brand new material.
Yeah. And then he's also written, speaking of fan clubs, he wrote for the Transformers Collectors Club. I think it was Beast Wars Uprising, right? You did.
Yeah, that was my big series. Beast Wars Uprising was the big series, and then I got to do Ask Vector Prime, which was an online Q&A, and a whole bunch of standalone articles. And then I also got to do The Art of Prime and Legacy, which was all the Transformers packaging art and the 30th anniversary collection. So I've been doing this for a while.
Oh yeah, and speaking of Legacy, I'm actually staring at it as we speak. It's part of the library in my home office. The Ark I keep the Ark I keep in the bedroom library. Legacy is the home office library.
Gotcha. Where do you keep The Art of Prime?
I haven't gotten that one yet. I need to get that one. I have like a list of Transformer stuff I need to add to the collection because.
I have bad news for you. Since it's gone out of print, The Art of Prime now is quite expensive.
Ooh.
So, my books is they're really good. So once they go out of print, they tend to go for stupid high prices on the secondary.
You know what? I'll find a way. I'll figure something out. I've actually had some luck a lot of times with online, and there's a used bookstore close to me that I can see what they can do for me. So. Here's hoping. Hope springs eternal. But you know what? Let's get on to the meat of it. IDW's Transformers universe. I first discovered IDW stuff. I remember this was back in 2006. I was living on my own in an apartment that was across the street from a shopping mall that had like a 2-story Barnes and Noble. There would be times I'd just go over there and relax. Do the thing of go to Barnes and Noble. Find like a stack of books, find a table, and just, read through them, spend the afternoon doing that. And I just remember going over to the graphic novel section, and I saw Transformers, and I didn't recognize the art. I recognized Simon Furman, but I was like, wait a minute, is this new stuff? So I think, that one trip, I skimmed through Infiltration and Escalation one right after the other. And I was just like, wow, this is like a new continuity. This is something totally brand new. And, I just, every time I was at Barnes & Noble and I saw a new Transformers thing, I would be reading this and I'd be like, wow, this is interesting. And then, I discovered the TF wiki and, just used that also. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And then, a few short years later, I just totally dove in. I think my first thing I actually bought and collected was Stormbringer, and then I've been gathering up trades and stuff like that ever since. How did you find out about it, Jim?
Well, I had the good fortune to be doing the BotCon the year that they announced it, so I was in the panel. Not on the panel. I was in the audience when the IDW had their first panel. So I was
lucky.
I was pretty primed, if you'll pardon the pun, to you can't resist that with Transformers, to jump on when they first started. And I'd always been a fan of Simon Furman. Simon Furman was what kept me a fan back in the 80s when my interest was originally starting to wane.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of remember I was of the age where when Pretenders first came out, I said, what are these? But then the comics came out and they were so good that I was sucked back in, and that was all Simon. Yeah. And when and Dreamwave didn't do a whole lot for me. Back in their revival, obviously they were the number one comic when they came out, which is really impressive. So it was neat to see that there was broad market appeal for Transformers, but the comics themselves, the first miniseries, is really slow and of Dreamwave, really slow. Not a whole lot happens, and then eventually it picks up a bit, and then it got truncated because of their sort of egregious financial issues. So when they announced that IDW was going to be rebooting the series and putting their own spin on it, and that Simon was going to be helming it, I was all in.
Nice. Zion, how did you discover this, iteration of Transformers?
From what I remember, I was going through Google, and I was just going through Shockwave and a Soundwave pictures for my phone wallpaper, and I came across this photo of Shockwave, and he's standing there with all these Cybertronian bodies hanging from the ceiling, and for some reason that photo really captivated me. For some reason, of course, back in the 80s and 90s, the Transformers obviously have their own sets of personalities and whatnot. But as a kid that I grew up with Armada and Cybertron and Energon, you don't really get to see much of that at least from what I remember. So this picture actually painted a picture of what Shockwave actually is, of his actual personality. And I had a deep want to get into this character. So I just said, screw it. Let me go to my local comic shop and just get in there. How about that for something in 2010? But whatever. But yeah, I just went there, just grabbed I believe my first issue was the Spotlight for Shockwave.
Ooh, nice.
Oh my God, that was when I mean there's nothing better than a good new read. Okay, but yeah, that's how I got into it. I just picked up a Shockwave comic, read it, and just went on from there.
Wow, and did you kind of try to catch up on stuff? Did you look at the Simon Furman stuff of Infiltration and Escalation and the different spotlights he did? And
yeah. So what I tried to do was that I tried to go attack it chronologically, and I start from Cybertron and move my way up. Because from how I was looking at it as a Transformers fan, I was always interested in the pre-Earth years of the war, because no matter what you see in TV and comics and whatnot, it's Megatron and Optimus always saying, we've been at this for eons and it'll never stop. And I've always wondered, what were the feelings of these eons and eons? So I pretty much started from there and read Escalation and Infiltration and All Hail Megatron and all the other stuff from there on.
Yeah, which that's something that I think got me with this iteration, is going into the backstory of the war, how it started, and that's something that fascinated me, was just the graying of the concept, that it's not just straight good and evil. The fact that the legacy of the Primes is kind of it's got some issues there. Everything with Sentinel and Zeta
Prime.
Zeta. Oh, geez. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I love the trilogy that Flint Dealey did. Autocracy, Monstrosity, Primacy. That's those were all beautifully painted and just beautifully written. Something though, at the beginning of the whole IDW thing, one of the things I did and Jim, I want to get your opinion on this, is for example, Simon Furman put Galvatron and Megatron as two separate individuals. Cyclonus was his own individual. During the All Hail Megatron era, we had Goldbug as a separate character from Bumblebee. And one of the things that got to me about that is I got this feeling that this continuity didn't have, what I like to call the checklist. That basically it's like, okay, well, at some point, Prime's going to have to die or like disappear or whatever, and we have, Hot Rod get the Matrix and becomes Rodimus Prime. Oh, at some point we have to have Megatron, get almost demolished and rebuilt into Galvatron. Oh, at some point we're going to have to do this. They just set the story up. Simon and all the other writers kind of did the story the way they wanted to do it, not trying to adhere to this idea of, well, this is supposed to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think some of it probably, ironically, comes from marketing pressure. Because do you follow the Chris McFeely Basics series on YouTube at all? I'm guessing that's a no.
Actually, no. I mean, I that sounds familiar. I don't think I've ever. Yeah, I've probably really heard of it. Yeah.
Well, he goes through and talks about. He traces concepts of Transformers from the beginning when they were first introduced to modern times. And one of the points he was making about Galvatron is the idea of Megatron evolving into Galvatron made a lot of sense in the 80s when toys would be on the shelves briefly and then go away, and there was no expectation they'd come back. So killing off Megatron and replacing him with a newer, cooler guy made a lot of sense. But if you want to have Galvatron in a modern context, they're not going to kill off Megatron. It's just not going to happen. If you kill him off, it's going to be very temporary. To the point where in the Unicron trilogy, Megatron gets killed and upgraded to Galvatron and then comes back as Megatron a few scant years later. And then you repeat the process. So he's Megatron, Galvatron, Megatron, Galvatron, Megatron, Galvatron, which is a weird dynamic that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then when you get to other series like Transformers Animated, where Megatron's going to get, in a fourth season would have gotten upgraded to a triple changer, there was no real thought about him becoming Galvatron at that point, because you're going to want the character Megatron around. So the idea that Megatron could coexist with Galvatron, I mean, obviously Furman in the 80s did this with time travel, but the idea that they could just be two completely separate characters and that there's something to the Galvatron character beyond just being Megatron to the nth degree, I think is a logical one, and one that from a marketing standpoint not only makes sense, but is perhaps inevitable.
Well, it also, I think it gives, like, if you have, the younger set reading this and seeing the two as two separate characters, all of a sudden that opens up, that kind of opens it up. It's like, oh, now the kids can have Megatron and Galvatron, like, together, play with them together, and, because the door's open for this.
Absolutely. And Titan's Return, let's say, you have a Megatron, several Megatron toys and a Galvatron toy comfortably coexisting.
Yep, exactly. Not to mention that I think that Galvatron and Cyclonus also benefited from this because they get to have their own personalities rather than just being, the 2.0 version of Megatron and well, we're not even going to get into Cyclonus' backstory.
Well, yeah, I'm going to go shenanigans on Cyclonus. Cyclonus was always his own guy. He always had his own personality and agenda, separate and apart from whoever he may or may not have been before the transformation. And I think that works well for the character because you can bring Cyclonus back and he doesn't have the same kind of baggage. Finding out what the core of Galvatron is, absent a Megatron connection, is perhaps more challenging, but also more interesting.
Yeah. One of the things that surprised me, picking up Infiltration for the first time is the human cast. Like, no Spike, no Sparkplug. Instead you had Jimmy Pink, Hunter, is it Nyan?
Yeah, Onion.
Onion, yeah, it's Hunter, Onion, and Verity. It's just like, who are these people? But then it's like, it's like, honestly, when you get to the fact that All Hail Megatron is like, several years later, that's not that big a deal because you get invested in these human characters. I mean, especially Verity, who kind of had her own, even though she appeared sporadically after Furman left, she had like her own arc, and she was actually, and it's a bit of a cliche, but yeah, she's the young girl who has like the tough exterior, but really she's using it as a shield. she was actually very interesting. And every time she showed up again, I'm like, oh, cool, Verity's here.
I feel like sporadic is perhaps unfair. I mean, she showed up consistently in the Wrecker's corner of the IDW universe.
Yeah, but that was like basically where that basically was the corner where she really would play with. Like she didn't. I think after Furman's run, she really didn't interact with the regular stuff again. I mean, aside from Ultra Magnus borrowing her likeness for the Avatar, which I'm sorry, part of me when I see like him using Verity's Avatar, I still hear like the Ultra Magnus voice, and I'm like, okay, it's like I can just picture that, like my default Ultra Magnus voice is of course the late great Robert Stack, so it's like here's this young woman sounding like Robert Stack, and I'm just like, oh, this is probably hilarious. Would be hilarious if ever it was animated.
I feel like hilarity was very much what Roberts was going for.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
To pick up on the human characters, initially when they showed up, I really didn't care about them because of course I'm here for my fighting giant robots. But
I feel that.
I really what's what I'm looking for? I really appreciated the realism in these human characters, because usually in Transformers, like the humans come in, of course they're freaked out for like 5 minutes, and then they pick up with the story and the plot. While with these characters, it took them like a good 3, 4, 5 issues, and between those 5 issues, like 2 of them had like close to mental breakdowns due to what's happening to them, and I feel like that's really warranted of the situation, and you don't really much in other Transformer mediums.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. And to your point, to me, it follows the evolution of the Transformers concept on the whole, that we might have a new cast of human characters, because generally speaking, when Transformers rebooted itself, you would get new humans, right? I mean, sure, you had Spike and Sparkplug in the old comic and sort of versions of them in the Marvel comic. But then as soon as you got to Dreamwave, it was a new cast, not a very compelling cast, but you had guys like Lazarus running around. And then you go to the Armada trilogy again, which is or Robots in Disguise, and you have Koji running around, and you have
Children will save the universe.
Yeah, well, but that's been part of the Transformers mythology since day one in virtually every series, not even excluding Beast Wars, and those were hairy primate children, but children nonetheless.
Which and actually that's something, and I got something though. Yeah, no, definitely, but it is Verity's a great example. She was. We kind of started out as like a teenager, but then grew into like into an adult woman. And the fact that we get to see that progression, it's not just, we got to keep having the young hip cast. It's being able to grow like that. I thought was a great, was one of the great things about the human cast. And I mean, hey, we did get the Witwikis eventually with All Hail Megatron, albeit not in the way we thought it would be, which still I think one of the biggest surprises is Spike, going from like the happy teen sidekick to to being the soldier that actually you could even say is kind of one of the guiding reasons why human Autobot relations went south.
Oh yeah, you're right. Major role there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, geez, going off and killing a character and then hiding it. It's like, yeah, this ain't G1. This ain't your father's G1 here. Spike ain't.
My aside for Spike is, to me, the core Spike was always the season 3 Spike from the U.S. I always liked the mature ambassador Spike.
Oh yeah,
he really seemed to have. Yeah, he had everything together. He knew what he was doing. He was confident. He was a leader. He even pretty much saves the whole universe at the end of 5 Faces of Darkness. I liked that interpretation. I liked him a little bit older, a little aged up.
Yeah. Yep, the one that has no problems taking some time away from the family to, I believe the line in Transformers the movie is kick Megatron's tail across the galaxy.
Absolutely. Although usually he brought the whole family with him, you know. Again, I'm not saying he's a good parent, but he is a good parent.
Although you do have to wonder. I mean, where was Carly during Transformers the movie? Because we know Daniel was in Autobot City, Spike was on Moonbase 1. Where was Carly in all this?
I think she was doing a guest lecture series over at MIT.
Yeah, probably. It's like, yeah. Anyway, well, okay. I think on that note, we do have to take a little bit of a break because, well, yeah, we do have commercials and all that stuff. So you know what? But we will. This discussion is not over. Okay, this is not over by a long shot. So we're going to take a little break here on Odyssey Radio, and we will be right back.
Yay, capitalism!
Yay! I wish we had. I kind of wish we had like the the bumper music, the dun 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 dun, that Victor Caroli, but darn it, no Victor Caroli.
Don't go away! Don't go away! We'll be back with more Mark Who 42 after this.
Odyssey.
Oh my God, it's full of stars.
You're now listening to Mark Who 42 from the Whoniverse and beyond. You're now listening to Mark Who 42 from the Whoniverse and beyond.
Dun, 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 dun. We now return to talking about Transformers on Mark Who 42. Yeah, that's my best Victor Caroli on short notice. I probably could do better, but yeah, unfortunately.
You'd do better if Wally Burr was standing behind you with a bullwhip.
Well, then see, this interview would never end because Burr would just be like, "No, do it again." Oh man, but I kid. I miss Wally Burr. Rest in peace, man. Seriously, I'm sure up in heaven he's giving Chris a lot of hell in in whatever voice recordings go out through heaven. But getting back to the main point. Yeah, we were leaving off. We were talking about Spike. IDW. I think that's the perfect segue. All Hail Megatron. That's actually something. That's one of the things I do have from the that I do have in my collection from IDW is I have All Hail Megatron. I have the second trade paperback that has like the second half of the main 12-issue series, and I have like the individual issues for like the first half. I know it gets a lot of flack because I know the writer threw out a lot of stuff that Simon Furman put in, and I know that, and I know he dropped the Matrix in, and all of a sudden made it a big deal, even though it really wasn't to start with. I got to admit, reading it all together, something that dawned on me, especially once I watched the episode like on DVD. For me, it feels like All Hail Megatron.
Episode on DVD.
Well, see, I'm about to reveal that.
Oh, sorry.
For me, no, that's okay. That's okay. What can I like build up? I watched Megatron's Master Plan Part 1 and 2 like on DVD, and it dawned on me. All Hail Megatron is basically Megatron's Master Plan in like comic book form, minus the cheesy plot of impersonating Autobots.
Which is why I like All Hail Megatron.
I don't remember what is left in Megatron's Master Plan once you get rid of impersonating the Autobots.
Well,
was there more to the episode than that?
Well, I mean, like by the end of Part 1 and for a lot of Part 2, you had the Decepticons had pretty much taken over. I mean, mind you, in the cartoon, it was a small city. In All Hail Megatron, they had basically like devastated the world. Was that aspect?
Totally, that feels like a pretty big disconnect. I mean, my memory of the episode is like the Decepticons having a big parade and humans having Decepticon symbol banners waving, which is a pretty far cry from All Hail Megatron.
Yeah, but I'm just like I focus kind of on like what happens after Megatron is like fooled you all, haha, and just starts taking over everything. Like that's the part that gets me, that I kind of equate with All Hail Megatron. Except again, All Hail kind of took it on a bigger scale and on a much more brutal scale. I mean, you had Astrotrain caving a subway, a subway station, like right down on people. You had, I know that there was a version of the opening scene with the Constructicons in New York where you actually saw blood on stuff. It was obvious humans are dead here, people. No, they didn't evacuate. This isn't early Dragon Ball Z where, oh, they got away. Darn. These guys are dead. So,
can I give you an aside? One of my favorite moments in Five Faces of Darkness, maybe even the whole Transformers original cartoon, is when Metroplex and Trypticon are about to have their battle, and there's a scene where Trypticon gets thrown into a city and lands on it and crushes it. And about 5 seconds before he lands on the city, you see all the people running away in buses and trains, and it's ludicrous. They evacuated the whole city in about 4 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's because remember, kids, they all got away.
Yeah, they all had parachutes. They weren't planes. They all had parachutes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, that is awesome. But yeah, All Hail Megatron. I like, again, people give that series flack, but reading it, all at once, I'm like, okay, this isn't that bad. I mean, I agree, the whole Infiltration Protocol thing was awesome. But, and I think also part of it is after the series was over, how you had other writers kind of taking some stuff and then kind of massaging it so it works a little better.
That's where I think All Hail Megatron's strengths come in, is the aftermath, which is perhaps appropriate given that it itself is supposed to be this cataclysmic event. I think that the backlash back in 2008, 2009, came because people were, the audience for the Infiltration, Escalation, Devastation series were very much enjoying what they were getting because it wasn't what we'd seen before. It was the first time we'd really seen Transformers done with a slow burn as opposed to just jumping right into the action. And we were, the audience who was there were responding to it. Now, obviously, IDW felt that editorially they needed to change directions, so they went into this ultra-violent, a little more sort of grown-up cartoon idea, and that's not so different than what we'd seen with Dreamwave. It felt like we were going back to something that was more familiar, away from something that was perhaps more interesting. But then, with hindsight, what we got out of that, the defeat of the Decepticons, lasted for the rest of the IDW run, which is almost 10 years. I mean, IDW, it went from 2005 to 2018. So it went 14 years. I mean, there's as much, there's far more material post All Hail Megatron than pre. And the writers, to their credit, stuck with that premise and explored the premise of post-war Cybertron. And that's in some ways similar. What people liked about the Devastation, Infiltration, Escalation series is it wasn't something we'd seen before. And we certainly haven't. Well, I mean, for the most part, we haven't seen a whole lot of post-war Transformers fiction. Animated, I suppose, is also post-Great War Transformers fiction, but it doesn't present itself that way. It still has the Autobots and the Decepticons mostly fighting each other. Just the Decepticons are sort of this retrograde faction that hasn't accepted defeat. But what we had in Transformers was the Costa run, followed by the Barber and Roberts and Scott runs, which really delve into what life on Cybertron is like now that the Autobots and Decepticons aren't in a galaxy-wide conflict.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that classic. There's that classic line of the war is won, now we got to keep the peace. And I feel like that's, especially in Robots in Disguise, the Optimus Prime book, Till All Are One, things like that. That I feel is more upfront. This idea, the stuff that's still on Cybertron and connected with Earth. This idea that, okay, the war is over, but the stuff that caused the war has never been really accurately dealt with. So you have all these characters that they may not have the faction symbols anymore, but they're not all of a sudden just going to become friends. I mean, yeah, for everybody like Skybite hanging out at Blur's bar, you have others that like Soundwave and other characters who still have that stuff inside. I think one of the best post-war books was the miniseries Punishment, which kind of dealt with that, by having a character being like, there was all this stuff that went down in the war that has never been addressed, and why is it just being left to hang there, unresolved, unanswered, undealt with.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah,
I mean that gets to the strength of the various series, and I think that when you're since you were talking about the robots in disguise and the stuff that was said on Cybertron, I think the appropriate mirror of that, of course, is the More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light material, where they sort of just leave completely. That's especially with hindsight, looking back on it, what was going on in Robots in Disguise is, okay, here are the people who are staying behind and are dealing with the fallout. And then over in More Than Meets the Eye, here are the people who are taking the opportunity of the war really truly being over to leave and find out what the galaxy is like. Not just what the piece is going to be like, but what does the broader universe look like, and what is our being Cybertronian, what is our place in this broader universe? One of the two characters that I think benefited from the post-war era. Number one, Bumblebee, which what I like about it is during the war, during the main series that occurred post All Hail Megatron, the whole thing of Bumblebee becoming leader of the Autobots. What I like about that is it kind of felt there was kind of an organic feel to it. Excuse the expression, we're dealing with robots, of the fact that, everybody wanted Bumblebee to lead them, and Bumblebee, during, the Transformers comic series and during Robots in Disguise, that he has to just deal with being in this position. And, it's not like he didn't take to it like a duck to water. He had his doubts. He had to deal with the fact that here comes Ultra Magnus, and here's Prowl, but he still had to live with the fact he's the leader now, even with all these doubts. And, I've always been a fan of VW Bug Bumblebee. IDW did have him upgrade to the whole, the sports car type thing. But what I like is that it felt, the upgrade felt like it went with his kind of upgrade in attitude, his upgrade in the fact that he's trying to get into the role of leader. It's Hot Rod to Rodimus Prime all over again, isn't it?
Yeah, well, except Bumblebee went from VW Bug to sports car rather than race car type thing to
bigger race car type thing.
Well, or Winnebago.
No, race car type thing to Winnebago.
Racing Winnebago.
Is there a better metaphor for going from being a teenager to being an adult than that? I don't think there is. I think nice. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
But, you brought up the other character that I think, lots of characters did really well under IDW, but since you mentioned his name, and he's one of my favorites, Prowl had some really interesting arcs, didn't he?
Jeez. Yeah, especially because IDW, see, Prowl was always Dreamwave kind of put used the tech spec, and it's okay, he's very logical, he's trying to approach this, like a problem that you can fit with, numbers and statistics. And the fact that Dreamwave took that, he's still the same character, but it's taking it to an extreme where, I love the Coda issue of All Hail Megatron, where, Prowl brings Cup back, and he's just what the absolute F, here it is. I have ideas. I've been working on this stuff. This will end the war. And, nobody pays attention to me. They pay attention to the guy who's coming down on a meteorite. What the heck? Come on. That's not going to win the war. Like, somebody listen to me.
I would suggest that the seeds of Prowl's characterization would go back as far as the old Marvel comics, where you see Prowl as the foil for Grimlock towards the end of the run, or even earlier on, where Prowl is advocating that, in the UK comics, that Prowl is advocating for the creation of super soldiers with the Matrix, and Optimus Prime feels like this is going to cost the Autobots their metaphorical soul. So, there is a pedigree for that.
Yeah, but this one was actually like the IDW. Just that was in the forefront. I mean, I know in the Transformers wiki, there's like an ongoing there's like the ongoing joke of Prowl being a prick, and it's like no, definitely. I mean, even and I do then that's the other thing. Like also there was Prowl's own spotlight, which some people were like, well, wait, what's going on here? And I like that other writers picked up on that and made it that Prowl tried, like he honestly tried not to be this manipulator, and it just didn't work. And I like that. I like that adds that extra dimension to him, that he really doesn't want, I don't really want to be a manipulator, but this is how we're gonna win. So
well, that also connects to what you were saying about the dark legacy of the Primes, right? Yeah. Because the Autobots aren't all good in this continuity, and the Decepticons aren't all bad. I mean, the Decepticons are the wrong side. They're the side that didn't strive for their better angels, but that doesn't mean they didn't have legitimate grievances. And the Autobots, for the most part, did try to fight for noble causes, but they also, their methodologies were, perhaps necessarily, but were definitely compromised.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and honestly, like you bring up, it's good that you bring this up about the Decepticons not being all bad, because I think Megatron really gets like a nice share of that mentality, especially when you get to his backstory. And a scene that sticks in my mind is with More Than Meets the Eye during Megatron's, run as an Autobot, where they go to the Necrobots planet. And it's revealed that Megatron went to his statue and saw, the flowers that are supposed to represent all the lives that someone has taken. The fact that the field of flowers stretches like to the horizon line, and the fact that he gets confronted with this, it's just like, holy cow, like you kind of have to wonder what sort of a character wouldn't, when confronted with this representation of their sins, kind of be like, what the hell? What have I been doing with my life? Where did I go wrong?
And I always found it funny.
And we saw some of that contemporaneously over in the Transformers Prime series with the ending, Rise of the Predacons, the movie that they did that ended that one. So it was clearly an idea that's time had come. But I have to say, it didn't. I liked where they were trying to go with it. I'm not sure it quite connected with me. Since we're getting low on time, I would suggest that we discuss the new IDW continuity that just debuted. We're two issues in.
Yeah. I kind of noticed, we mentioned slow burn and slow build-up. That's kind of how it feels. We're two issues in, and really not much has happened. I will say this, though. What I like is that we're starting on Cybertron. We're starting with what leads to the war, and I kind of like that. I kind of do like that. There's, it's not a matter of, we're being dragged into the middle of something. If I have any reservations, it's that, I really hope they know what they're doing, as far as the burn the slow burn is concerned, because I'm just kind of worried that some people may get turned off and just be like, okay, I want something to happen. Why isn't something happening? Okay, bye. Let me know when something happens.
Yeah, I would say, I don't mind a slow burn in general. It is perhaps always risky to do a slow burn because you have to trust your audience will stick with you. I'd say it's hard to know where they're going, other than presumably eventually an Autobot Decepticon war. But if I have a problem with it, problem's probably overstating it, but if I have a concern, it's that tonally it does not feel very different from the IDW 2005 series that we had. One of the things I really liked about Infiltration was it was tonally disconnected from Marvel, Dreamwave, what had gone before, the old Sunbow cartoon, even Armada. It felt different than each of those. And this one doesn't feel different than the main IDW continuity to me. It feels, the art style feels similar. The character motivation feels similar. Even the choice of characters that they're choosing to feature feels like it's the same set of guys. So I think I would have liked a series that more aggressively staked out its own direction. See, I would have liked the All Hail Megatron moment here. You're not necessarily starting in media res with tons of violence, but starting with something that feels like a clean break. And this one doesn't feel like a clean break to me.
Yep. Well, on that note, actually, I think we do have to close the book on our IDW discussion. But you know what? We are going to shift gears for a couple of minutes because we've gotten to that point in the show where the guest gets to plug away. And I know, Jim, based off your post on Facebook, that you do have something to plug away. So please, plug away. Tell us what you're working on.
Happy to do it. So I've been working on, since about August, a book called Transformers: A Visual History. And it is massive. It is, according to Amazon, it's 408 pages. I don't know if that's right or not, but it's really, really big. It's a huge tome that covers all 35 years of the Transformers' existence from the perspective of the artwork. We're broken down into 5 chapters. We start off talking about the toys, since Transformers is a toy a toy property, so we have lots of toy art in there from all the different. I don't want to say every single series, but from series all the way from '84 right up to the present. From G1 through Siege with Beast Wars and Armada, Energon, Cybertron, Prime, movie toys, all that in between. We go to the comic books and go through some of the iconic comic art. So IDW was top of mind because I was actually just looking at some of those pages and trying to make sure we're balancing, do we have the right amount of robots in disguise versus more than meets the eye? Have we featured too much All Hail Megatron and not enough Costa era stuff? So comics is the second section. We go on to TV. We have production art from the various different Transformers television shows over the year. We go into video games, one of the major and perhaps sometimes forgotten areas of Transformers, but we talk about, all the way back to the Commodore 64 era, right through the modern stuff like Legends and War for Cybertron and Follow Cybertron. So there's some really great art in there. And we close off with a pretty big section about the film art, mostly the production and concept art for each of the 6 films. Each one gets its own, sub-chapter within that. So it's a really ambitious project, trying to squeeze all of that artwork into a mere approximately 400-ish page volume. And I just got the sample pages back from the designer, and it just looks amazing. And I'm really proud of the work I've done and the work he's done. And I think you guys are really going to dig it. It's available for pre-order now. So if you're interested, it's definitely one to check out. And as I alluded to earlier on the program, my stuff does tend to sell out its printings and then shoot way up in value. Transformers Art of Prime, I think, goes for about $100 now, and it originally retailed.
Yay!
So you might want to jump on it now when you can get it for under cover price instead of over cover price. But I think it'll be pretty special.
Yeah, I think we're probably definitely going to have to put put a link up on the Marku 42 website, on Facebook. We're shared to Twitter. We'll have to make sure to get the link and and pre-order, whoever, those of us who can. And definitely I will, I'll be looking into that so I don't have the same mistake that happened with Prime.
And there is a deluxe special edition version that comes with a slipcase. And
Yep. My wallet's screaming at me right now. My wallet is yelling at me, and it's like, don't listen to the man! Just get the book! Thank you for coming on. Thank you for plugging your book. When can it be expected to hit?
It should be out around about November, certainly with plenty of time for Christmas is the goal.
Ooh, okay, well, I think I know what Santa can get me. But yeah, thank you for coming on, Jim. You know, thank you for that. Always a pleasure to have you. We're definitely going to have you back. I know we were talking about G.I. Joe before we started the episode proper, so we might have to do a Joe episode just to have you back.
That'd be great, and I've written Joe books. So
nice. And see, and we'll have to figure out who else from the Joe world we can have on there. I may have to talk to Larry Houston or Buzz Dixon, see if they're available. You know, make this a real Joe party.
Love it.
Anyway, well, on that happy note, we're wrapping up this episode. Unfortunately, we don't have Secret Files of Teletran 3. Unfortunately, or Teletran it was Teletran 2. Sorry. And I need to watch the Sunbow episodes again. I haven't done that in a while. But I want to thank our guest, Jim Sorenson. Zion, thank you for co-hosting with me.
Anytime.
And don't forget, we do have our website for Mark Who 42. We've got the Facebook page. You can find me. You can find Mark. We're on Twitter. So is the Patricia Helm, who couldn't be here. And you can also listen to us on Odyssey Radio. And if you want to listen to our old episodes, they are on YouTube. Unfortunately, this podcast is audio only, so it's not like you can see all of us with headsets on and see our messy home offices. You're just going to have to imagine that. So, from all of us here at Mark Who 42, thank you for listening. And remember, as Optimus Prime would say, freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Also, buy my toys.
Mark Who 42 has been written and presented by Mark Baumgarten, Trish Freyre, Eduardo M. Freyre, Iggy Matthews, and Zion Quinros. Mark Who 42 has been edited, directed, and produced by Mark Baumgarten. The theme music is by Sam Beckwith. Mark Who 42 is owned and copyrighted by Mark Baumgarten 2019. This is Odyssey Radio.